Joining me now is legendary author Fritz Springmeier. Hello, Fritz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Bruce. I hope my voice holds up. Thank you for the privilege to be on here.
Oh, it's great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us, Fritz. I mean, we were supposed to do this a week ago, but man, you were really sick. How are you getting over that cold of yours?
I'm still sick, but let's do it. Hopefully I'll hold up. And I do take exception that I don't call myself a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
I'm a historian, but I understand, that's a common term that's bandied around. But I'm really into history. I've loved history my entire life. I read an incredible amount of history, researched an incredible amount of history. I got excited listening to you talk about JFK's assassination because I believe that that's like one of the very best entry points for people to understand that there's something wrong going on.
Absolutely.
And while I was listening to you, I was thinking of a man's name. His name was George de Mohrenschildt. And you were talking about how certain people were assassinated to keep the lid on that whole JFK assassination. Well, he was suicided in March 1977, and he connects with a lot of the families that I exposed. I wrote this book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and I cover the major Illuminati families. I got those names from people that were in the Illuminati. Okay. Wow. So it's not something I stand by that research because a lot of people have come at me since 1990 and said, oh, those aren't the 13 families. Well, they consistently prove themselves when you start looking into things like the JFK assassination. You see these families come up, and I'll mention that in a minute. But like I mentioned, the Astor, Bundy, Collins, DuPont, Freeman, Kennedy, Lee, Onassis, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Russell, the 13th, which is the Holy Merovingians, which is European royalty, Van Dynes, Krupps. So these are the families I mentioned. If we look at the Kennedy assassination and we look at George de Mohrenschildt, he was getting ready in 1977 to have an interview where he was going to expose how this assassination took place, the Kennedy assassination. George de Mohrenschildt, he ties in with the Onassis family, the Rothschild family, and he ties in with, he was in intelligence, and he was close to the Oswald family. So he's like a connecting link to all of this, And
absolutely.
Pardon me?
Absolutely, Fritz.
Yeah. So when we go back in time, we see several very powerful families that were involved in the Baku Russian oil fields. That's down in Georgia. The Rothschilds came in right at the start of things. And interestingly, I wrote a post recently where I talked about it's circumstantial evidence shows that Stalin may have been a Rothschild descendant because his mother was there at one of these castles when the Rothschilds representative was there. And so, we don't have absolute proof, but there's various circumstantial evidence that Stalin may have been a Rothschild. And Onassis worked with them and the Baku oil fields. And George de Mohrenschildt worked through World War II and worked with Onassis. And he was also in U.S. intelligence.
Right.
And so he, like I say, he was close to the Oswald family too. So he connected in with all of this. And for some reason, he decided to expose it all. And he had written this all up, and he was going to have an interview to expose how these powerful families had killed Kennedy. And the next thing you know, he's found dead with a shotgun blast to the head, and the police say it's a suicide. I've had a number of informants that were visiting with me, you know, and they got suicided the same way. And here in Portland, a couple of these people that got suicided like that, the police, well, when they take the body, instead of doing an autopsy like the law requires, they immediately cremate these people. You know, I've seen this happen before. They cover up the evidence. So
that's right.
You know,
it's like when they took the body from Parkland Hospital, when they took JFK's body, that was outright theft.
Yeah.
Under Texas law, they could not take the body until they had to do the autopsy there at Parkland, but they weren't going to have that. They needed to have their military industrial complex psychopaths, you know, take over the autopsy, as they did.
And the majority of American people know that the story that we're being told is not the right one. So it's a great entry point for people to realize that there is a hidden hand. And then, as you well know, one of the things that I've been doing for the last 20 some years is writing books exposing this hidden hand. I wrote 7 books on the Illuminati, and I was just referring to my Bloodlines of the Illuminati book there, where in the very start of the book, I was rather pleased with myself on this research. I have a genealogy chart showing how 25 American presidents are closely related. I realize most people are going to say, well, yeah, we're all related to Adam and Eve. But no, these presidents are closely related.
Oh, like interbred, maybe?
and then I have other charts, other genealogy information that show other connections, you know. So a lot of people have watched the movie Braveheart.
That's right.
You know, Braveheart fought against Edward the First Longshanks, who was from the House of Plantagenet. And 12 American presidents are direct descendants from King Edward. None are descended from Braveheart because William Wallace got ordered. They assassinated him, which seems to be what happens when people challenge this system.
That's right, Fritz. And you know, I was looking over some of the new the revised version of your Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and you actually talk about Prince Charles being related to Dracula, right? I can't believe that. I mean, I do, but I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, and at the time that I came out with that genealogy chart, tying them back in, that wasn't public knowledge. But since I came out with it, now Prince Charles is openly, you know, talking about his roots in Transylvania, wow, you know, wanting to buy property there and hobnobbing with that area. So it's come out publicly about this connection.
That could be where that whole word like draconian comes from as well, right? I mean, it's insane, Mr. Fritz, Mr. Springmeier. But you've also co-authored a couple of books. One in particular, Mind Control. What was it? How to Create the Perfect Mind Control Assassin? Is that it?
Well, you were close, but not exact. The exact title is The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave. That's an outrageously long title, but as I thought about it, I didn't want to remove any word from the title because every word was key. It's a total mind control. It's a hidden mind control. It's trauma-based. All of the words in the title were key because I didn't want anybody to underestimate exactly what it is.
Absolutely. And, you know, we see it happening. I mean, in pop culture specifically, you have these artists that are just blatantly just advocating just Luciferic ideals and all these, I mean, they even go out of their way to edit some of these videos to make them look like I mean, in one video in particular, this Rihanna made herself look like the Baphomet. I mean, they do this to show the public that they're the ones in control, right? I mean, MTV, the first video MTV releases is Masonic. So is this by coincidence?
No, you're right. They're right in our face with it. It's almost like they're laughing at us at times. Probably are. They're at a point where they're just like going for broke, and they think nobody can stop us. We can do this stuff right in their face. It also relates to, as you probably are aware, they had planned to do an externalization of the hierarchy. Alice Bailey, in a book entitled Externalization of the Hierarchy, predicts how they're going to bring in this new world order. And she says what was done in secret, in the occult, they're going to take that and externalize it into society. So all these hand signs and all the rest of this that was so secret, now they're just doing it in their face. And how do you get people how do you get the person the common person on the street to do this? Well, you get someone like you're talking about, who's an idol, an entertainment idol, to do this kind of stuff. And then people see it and then they copy it. They think it's cool.
Exactly. And Mr. Springmeier, also, we have politicians, in particular, people like Ron Paul. I mean, this goes back to Mr. John Todd, a close acquaintance of yours, right?
Well, I had tried to befriend Todd after he got framed and sent to prison.
Right.
And for a while there, I was helping him out while he was in prison. But then I lost contact with him, and they shifted him to a different prison after I lost contact with him. And eventually he died, so he's dead.
And that's very mysterious circumstances regarding his death. But I mentioned Ron Paul Mr. Todd exposed the whole Ayn Rand, she was a girlfriend of one of the Rothschilds. And here you have prominent figures in politics who are actually on our side of the coin, naming their children after a renowned Satanist, as in Ayn Rand. Whether people want to believe it or not, I mean, these people are we even have some of the highest politicians who claim to be on our side, like Mr. Paul, who are themselves in the occult. How does this happen? How do we let this happen?
Well, they're very skilled at controlling things. These bloodlines have been created. They are the ones that created the system, the world system that we have. And they're very skilled at knowing how the human mind works and how to manipulate people. And, so they create controlled opposition. They would rather control their own opposition than have it out there loose as a loose cannon. So they will create their own. They will put their own people quietly in to lead, and then they know exactly how hard they're going to be punched, when they're going to be punched, exactly what their opposition is capable of, and then they can just rise above it and make sure that they win. It's like being able to see your opponent's hand when you're playing cards,
We're telegraphing our punches by associating with, or just following the lead of these prophets of false hope, as I would like to put it.
Yeah. But still, sometimes, God can bring good out of what the enemy means for evil. One of the positives is people that, participated in the Ron Paul campaign. There was a lot of good networking.
Right.
And so oftentimes it can work that way. They try to do something for evil and God can still bring some good out of it. So I'm not entirely negative about Ron Paul's campaign.
Right. No, me neither. I mean, I have a lot of his books and the Fed, and pretty much most of his policies would mirror, what I would agree with. If I was in office, if I was in his position, I'd go by his book. But that's what gets me, that he's total controlled opposition, in the fact that this man has been linked to a secret society. And that's what my goal is. I mean, if we're able to uproot the evil ones out of our neighborhoods and out of, seats of power, we'll be in control of the show. If we're able to have a person like you, Mr. Springmeier, in Ron Paul's shoes, I guarantee, we'd get something done. You wouldn't have succumbed to Romney, right? Not at all, right? You wouldn't have endorsed Romney.
Yeah, Ron Paul really disappointed a lot of people that worked hard and sacrificed for his campaign. In both times, in both of his presidential campaigns, he disappointed people. Well, we got to get used to disappointment.
That's right. Almost expected now, right?
Pardon me?
It's almost expected now. The disappointment is you're just waiting for it.
Well, life is going to, these are the kind of things that life brings. And, oftentimes people talk about Thomas Edison trying to discover the light bulb, and he just kept persisting until he succeeded. A lot of times we think that if we don't succeed the first time around, we're not meant to succeed. And that's not the truth. We've just got to persist. Nature is that way, Grand Canyon wasn't built in a day. These problems didn't come about in a day, and they're not going to leave in a day.
That's right. And you're the shining example of persistence. I mean, the Illuminati, I believe, went as far as to imprison you, Mr. Springmeier. I mean, took many years out of your life, and just, I mean, could you tell us what helped you? What was the strength that helped you get over that very dark period in your time, sir?
Well, being in prison is it cramps a person's style, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity to wreck your life. The system's designed to shred a person, shred your life, shred your self-image and everything. A lot of things came together for me. One is I felt the hand of God on me. A lot of people prayed for me. A lot of people did things to help me out. If it hadn't been for their prayers, their assistance, I could have easily gone down the tubes. And then also, I made good choices myself. Fortunately, I had the maturity that from the start, I made some choices that kept me on the right track. For one, I'm not a tough guy, nor did I try to change to be a tough guy. I told myself, look, you've just got to be yourself, and the right kind of people will come around you. And another commitment that I made to myself was not to change who I was, because the system's always trying to beat you down and turn you into something, shred you and turn you into something else.
Right.
And I just determined I was not going to allow them to do that. So it was a number of things can be credited with getting me through that time. There were definitely times where it was, where there were, how to put it, challenges. Like one time the prison doctor wanted to give me medicine that would have killed me, and I had to refuse. But if I hadn't been on top of things, I could have just easily, like a lot of people, just acquiesce to whatever the doctor tells you, I'm not that type of person. I think for myself, and I told him, you know, I'm not going to take that. It'll kill me. And he said, oh, don't worry. After a month's time, we'll bring you back in here and test to see how you are. Yeah, in a month's time, I would have been dead.
maybe that's what you saw right through their scheme. That's probably what they were trying to do. I mean, obviously, Mr. Springmeier, I mean, the people like Bill Cooper and John Todd weren't as lucky. I mean, you have friends in high places, I believe.
High as in you mean godly places?
Absolutely so.
Definitely.
You got to check with me, right? I'm just kidding. No, absolutely true. And that's what I believe gave you the strength to overcome their hexing, you pretty much, you know, their this spell, you know, that's just throwing that's this negative energy, that took these years of your life from you, Mr. Springmeier. And it was like, I mean, I was talking about Nero and the fact that it's Nero, or Roman Emperor Nero's birthday today, which is symbolic of the whole Christmas, the whole Christmas time. You know what I mean? It goes back to the days of the Roman Empire, the lights on the houses, and ironic that we're exposing this on his birthday. I mean, nobody really knows when Jesus was born. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, there's different ideas as to when he was born, but these competing ideas, although several of them have lots of merit, nobody knows for sure. I sometimes refer to Christmas as Happy Nimrod Day because it was when they celebrated back in Babylon Nimrod, and Nimrod happens to be, as you probably are aware, the Rothschilds secretly traced their genealogy back to Nimrod, and then the Cushites going into Khazar and on. So we have one of our powerful Illuminati bloodlines, the Rothschilds. They are the world's most powerful economic family, and here they go clear back to Nimrod, whose birthday we're going to celebrate here on the 25th. The Rothschilds, by the way, this pertains to our, what's going on here in America. They quietly began financing the upsurge of China, the rebuilding of China. And so they are making lots of money off of this Chinese economy.
That's right.
And Americans need to realize that the elite have abandoned America. You know, all the Fortune 500 companies, all of them have offices in Shanghai, China. You know, wow. These people have abandoned America. They're trying to loot America before they burn it. And so a lot of these Americans have this strange attitude that, like, if they keep their nose clean, the world system is going to pat them on the back and treat them nice. No, they don't love America, and they could care less about how the average American does. We're just like ants to the elite. And if millions of us die, it's not going to bother them.
Right, because, I mean, they're already planning on colonizing the moon or just colonizing some other planet, right? You see, China made it to the moon recently.
Yeah.
That's just incredible. But let's talk about some more of your work here. You exposed a lot of the mind control, the predictive programming that the government is responsible for, in particular the Central Intelligence Agency with Project Monarch. tell our listening audience about Project Monarch.
Well, way back in ancient Egypt, they were doing this trauma-based mind control. They had dream temples where they did hypnosis. They used eels, electric eels for like stun guns to do the electric shock. They knew how to torture. So they had the basic elements. You know, they had their potions, their magical potions, which we call pharmaceutical drugs back then too. So they had the basic elements, but they hadn't. And the Illuminati have been doing this trauma-based mind control for thousands of years. It works off of the principle that if you traumatize somebody severe enough when they're a little child, if they have intelligence and disassociative abilities, they can become a multiple personality instead of dying. And so they have been creating multiple personality disorder in their own children for thousands of years, but they wanted to tighten it up and bring it up into scientific levels. So a big reason that the Nazi concentration camps were done like they were done was they were doing experiments, mind control experiments on traumatizing people to work out the charts, you know, to find out, okay, if you weigh so much, you're so high, you're so old, you can survive being frozen for how many seconds, you know. They worked out the charts on the trauma so that they could have you have a near-death experience without actually killing you. It's a very fine line there. And so they brought the Nazis over that had done the experiments and allowed them to use what they had learned in the concentration camps to do the trauma-based mind control over here.
That's right.
To a more sophisticated level. And the CIA and the other intelligence agencies got involved. So they had cover names, you know, Project Monarch, MK Ultra. And then, of course, because these started being found out, then they have to pretend like they've stopped them, you know. Supposedly MK Ultra no longer exists. So They ended that program. They shredded thousands and tens of thousands of documents related to it just to cover their tracks. But, you know, they're still doing the mind control. And all these intelligence agencies is the gophers. They're just front agents for the Illuminati. The top programmers for the CIA, for instance, were Illuminati. Mengele, who was a grand master in the Illuminati, who was in charge of concentration camp research, he was brought over, and I spent time helping some of his victims, some of his mind control victims, break free of their programming. So Joseph Mengele, who was allowed, I mean, he traveled, you know, back to Europe even. You know, this is like one of the biggest war criminals in all history. And if you understand how much our intelligence agencies know of what's going on, the idea that Mengele can just travel around, la-di-da-da-da, go to Switzerland, visit his family, take pictures, you know, and not get caught. Well, you know, there's a reason why he didn't get caught. He was working for us, or I shouldn't say us, he was working for our intelligence agencies.
And Fritz, all these guys, all these Germans, these scientists that practice this type of torture, this MK Ultra Project Monarch torture, it originated from Operation Paperclip, right? When they brought these guys over to try to help us with the war against the Axis, in particular the Japanese.
Yeah. We also gave a free ticket to some of the Japanese war criminals too that were doing horrendous research, doing germ experiments on humans. Our government saying, you've got all this interesting information. You work with us and we won't prosecute you. It's why did we fight this war, people? And if people really realize that World War II, even though we have this image of it being a great crusade, it was a manufactured conflict, and people
Absolutely.
like the Bush family were making big money off of it. Prescott Bush, our president's father, was making big bucks off of Auschwitz concentration camps during the war. Those millions of dollars that they made off of Auschwitz, because their company that they ran was over there, they used those profits from that slave labor
Fritz,
to jumpstart the Bush family's political careers.
Mr. Springmeier, unfortunately, we're out of time. And you mentioned the Bush family. George de Mohrenschildt was talking to George Sr. right before he suicided himself. So what a coincidence there. Anyway, Mr. Springmeier, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to many more talks with you. Thank you for joining us. We just barely hit the tip of the iceberg, but we're out of time. But again, thank you so much for joining us, Fritz.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Bruce. And bye to all your listeners.